Well, hello there, everybody. I hope you're tuning in today. I'm so thrilled to be here with Pessy. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I know it'll take a little bit for those of you to arrive if you're joining me live. And if you are coming in later and watching this, I am so glad you are here. My name's Lisa Baylis, and I need to just start with a little bit of a landing arrival. And what that means for me is a chance just to catch my breath, slow down, and soften into this moment. I don't know about you, but as an educator, I find that there's so many transitions in my day, and taking a few moments to pause and just regroup between those transitions, like moving from what I was doing to arriving here with you, is a really good practice. So I want to share with you a little practice that I love to do. It's called the slow down practice because I'm often reminding myself, oh, honey, just slow down right now. There's so much, it's so fast. So join me in this little, very short 1-minute practice in just slowing down and arriving and being with us here on this live call today. So what it might look like for you is just settling in. If you're holding something, put it down. If it feels right and you want to close your eyes or just lower your gaze. And then we're going to use the acronym SLOW to just remind us to slow down. So first with the S, just softening through your face, your eyes, your jaw, giving your body a chance to soften your face. L, lower your shoulders, let them go. O, open your breath into your chest, your belly, your heart. And W, welcome yourself to this moment. Just so quickly we can slow down, take a breath, and be present together. Whew, see, it doesn't take long, but it sure is important for me. And yeah, I needed that just to be able to be here with you today. So if you're here, welcome. Thanks for slowing down for just a moment and being with me today. My name is Lisa Baylis. I am a high school counselor and teacher in the Greater Victoria School District, which is in British Columbia, Canada. I work part-time there. I am also a certified mindfulness and self-compassion teacher, and recently a published author of the book Self-Compassion for Educators, which is so exciting that it's out in the world, and I hope that it's in your hands right now too. I also have created a program called Awaken the Wellbeing for Educators, which is truly a passion of mine, which is all about supporting the long-term sustainable well-being of educators like you. And so as a practicing educator, and lastly, I'm also a mom, and I know what it's like to be pulled in so many directions. And so I'm just so grateful that you're taking a few moments to join me here today. And I'm really excited to be here with Pessy and to share mostly about an upcoming webinar that I'm doing with them. It's on October 29th, and I'm going to tell you so much more about it if you stick around at the end, but I don't want you to miss it. And so register now through Pessy. You can see it there. And come join me on October 29th. It's a full day, and we're going to dive into the why, the how, and the what to really support our well-being and learn practices, sustainable practices based in mindfulness and self-compassion so that we can get through what this really difficult year and this really difficult time in education is. So don't mark that in your calendar, or do mark that in your calendar and join me October 29th. But today I just wanted to sort of play a little bit. We've got some time together, and I wanted to share a little bit about some of the great practices you can do right now, even before we get to October 29th. So, stress is hard right now. The role of education has been really, really challenging, whether it's a global pandemic, whether it's all the social movements that are happening around our world. I don't know about you, but I'm really feeling pulled, and I feel like more than ever, the space between where I'm okay and not okay is really, really small, and that I can be fine for a moment, and then instantly I feel like I'm not okay. And this level of stress has been growing for us as educators, especially for me, over the last few years. And so when we notice this, we're seeing sort of a low-grade stress response happening in our bodies, in our hearts, with our emotions, with our feelings, and it's making it really difficult to continue to show up and do the amazing work, the heartfelt work of being an educator. Because what we know is that stress is contagious and emotions are contagious. And when we're feeling it, it's very likely that our students are feeling it. Or vice versa, when our students come in feeling overwhelmed, stressed, anxious, we start to feel that too. And it becomes this cycle of sitting in a really difficult place. And so as caregivers for these little people who, take our hearts, and we really need to find ways to be able to continue to show up without depleting and feeling exhausted all the time. Knowing that the system is hard, knowing that the challenges that we face are really difficult, but also knowing that we got into this work because we love kids and we want to make a difference. So holding on to some of that is really important. The work that I often talk about is the idea of embodying practices that connect our head and our heart. We're really good as educators of sort of being in our head often. We're planning and doing and really getting into stuff, but often we forget to drop into our heart and connect that. Or sometimes it's the other way. We're so feeling of what everyone else is feeling, we forget to bring back that connection of just holding on to holding on to those really difficult feelings. So, as it says there, you can join and find free practices with me on my website. But today I want to talk you through a couple that I think maybe will help you in the moment, every day, in and out of your classroom. And the first one is a little exercise called How do I treat a friend? And here's what I want you to do. If you are with me and you've got a pen or a piece of paper, I want you to take a moment and I want you to write a few things down. And if you're joining me later, you can do this, and I'm going to do it pretty quick. So you're welcome to just pause as we go if you need to and just reflect on this. Or if you're joining me live today, let's play for a moment. So what I want you to do is I want you to take out a piece of paper and a pen or jot some notes on your phone. And I want you to think about a dear friend or colleague right now who is really struggling. And I know we can all have one in our mind pretty quick because our schools are really full of many different challenges. And I can imagine that you can find a colleague who's really struggling right now, maybe with a difficult class or managing, the ins and outs of what the pandemic is bringing, or who is struggling with a student or another colleague. And I just want you to think, what would you say to this dear colleague, this friend of yours who you work with? What kind of words would you offer them that would help them, just feel loved and connected? So taking a moment and just jotting down a few things of how you meet your dear friend and your dear colleague on staff. Perhaps it's things like, you're doing such a great job, or I believe in you, or you can do this. Write them down, and also just notice, what's your tone like when you talk to or think about meeting a friend. We're not going to linger here very long, but I just want you to be aware of the words that maybe we offer somebody else when they're really struggling. And then at the same time, now I want you to imagine you are that one that's really struggling, and perhaps it is you. And I want you to think about, what do you say to yourself in these moments? What do the words sound like when you offer them to yourself? What is it like? Thanks, Gina. I see you're popping in here and saying tone is a big deal. What does it sound like when we talk to ourselves? Tone is a big deal. What does the words that we offer ourselves in those moments when we're struggling, do they sound similar or different to how we talk to our friend? What does it feel like when we talk to ourselves? Is it similar or different to we talk to our friend? Tone is a big deal. So I just want you to think about this and notice if there's a difference. For many of us, we find it easier to offer kindness and compassion and love outward to our students, to our colleagues, to our friends. But when we bring it back to ourselves, it's really hard. And so just that invitation to, maybe pay attention over the next little while. What's it like to talk to yourself, perhaps the way you would talk to a dear friend, a colleague, someone that you love? This practice really resonated for me when I heard my daughter, who at the time was 8, being really critical and unkind to herself. And I started thinking, I need to model this for the people in my lives. I need to talk to myself the way I would talk to my own daughter, my students that I love, my colleagues that I care for so much. So what would it be like if I am able to offer those words? This is a practice. It's not always easy at first, but an invitation to just see what that's like. I said the words compassion. It's often easier to give compassion than it is to bring it in. Compassion means to notice that someone's suffering and then have a desire to alleviate it. We're, pretty good at this with other people sometimes, especially as educators. I see this a lot. I know as a practicing educator, it's really easy for me to want to wrap up and care for my colleagues and my students. Self-compassion just means that I do that with myself too. That I notice and I'm aware that this is hard right now. And I have a desire to want to meet that and support it. Such an important practice. So, one of the ways that we talk about self compassion, and I just want to drop these here, is there's three components, and most of this research has been done by Dr. Kristen Neff. And I want to talk about those three components because they're so important in how we bring self compassion to ourselves. And the first one is the concept of mindfulness. Now, I know you've heard this because mindfulness is kind of out there and everywhere right now. Mindfulness means to pay attention to what's kind of going on within us and what's going on around us. That's pretty general idea of it. What happens for many of us is that we don't slow down and stop long enough to recognize that what's going on within us. And if suffering or if compassion means to meet suffering, we have to actually be aware that things are hard right now. So the beautiful practice of mindfulness is a key component because it says, this one right now, me, I'm struggling. I need to meet this. And it gives ourselves the permission to actually do that. So a key component to offering ourselves the kindness and love and compassion we deserve is to know that it's happening, know that we're struggling. And really, a lot of us are really good at just ignoring all those things. So permission to feel a little bit, permission to recognize that this is hard because we can't meet it if we don't know it's there. Another key component is the component of common humanity. And I so love this one. It's the idea that we're not alone. We're actually all in this together. We may not all be in the same struggles or the same situations, but as human beings, we all suffer. We all struggle. We all know what stress feels like. And we get to acknowledge that it's important that we meet it. And that we can remember that we're not alone and that we're allowed to feel our feelings. It can just bring a little bit of connectedness into the world. So that as an educator, if you're in your classroom having a really difficult day, there's this beautiful invitation that right now you're not alone and that you don't have to feel isolated or scared or totally worried about it because others are feeling this way too. And then we recognize it with that mindfulness because we're paying attention. We know we're not alone. And then we do this third component, which is this wonderful component of loving kindness. When we know that we're struggling and we remember we're not alone, we invite the beautiful practice of kindness towards ourselves. It sounds a lot simpler to say than it is to do sometimes. But this is that practice of what would I say to a dear friend? How can I offer that same heartfelt, loving message back to myself right now? What would that feel like? What would it be like if during a difficult moment at school, instead of getting caught up in all of the difficult things, I just slowed down. I softened my face and lowered my shoulders. I took a deep breath and I just recognized and welcomed whatever's going on. And I just gave myself some invitation to meet that with kindness rather than criticism, gentleness rather than hurt and anger and fear. And so these lovely practices can be summed up really lovely to use as a practice called a self-compassion break. And this is another practice I invite you to try. And it's so lovely. You can find it on my website. I guide you through it there in sort of like a longer meditation practice. And I hope you'll find it there. And we're going to just try it really quickly right now. This is called a self-compassion break. So what this invites you to do is to think about a time when you're struggling. And I want you to imagine something that's just being really hard right now. Maybe something in your professional life, or it may be something that's hard in your personal life. But as you're sort of leaning into the many things, if you're like me, when someone asks me to think about a struggle, all the things pop up. Don't jump to the hardest right now. Don't jump to the 9 out of 10. Pick something that's like a 4 out of 5 that we can play with for a moment. Because when we're first starting to invite self-compassion in, what we want to do is just welcome it with a bit of comfort and tenderness instead of jumping into the hardest thing. So picking something that you're struggling with that creates a little bit of discomfort in your body but doesn't put you into overwhelm. Then I'm going to invite you just to think about feeling into that. What's being said with this situation is what's feeling it in your body, noticing how it's going, just settling into recognizing what it's like to be a human being who's struggling for a moment. Just paying attention. I'm going to offer some kind and gentle words, and I invite you just to say them back to yourself for a moment. So, the first phrase that I invite you to say is just a recognition of the challenges and the suffering you're doing. It might sound something like, "This is hard." Just, "This is hard," or "Ouch, this hurts." We're inviting a little of that mindful awareness right now. So just maybe your eyes are closed, maybe your eyes are open and you're thinking of this, but you're just recognizing, ooh, yeah, this is a hard moment. So that awareness of mindfulness. And then the next thing I'm going to invite you to offer yourself is a little bit of common humanity for this situation you're thinking about. It might sound something like, "I'm not alone," or "Other people would feel just like me." Just that beautiful practice of common humanity. And then there's this third practice, that just this invitation of, may I bring myself some kindness right now? May I offer myself some compassion? So that may feel differently for all of us. It may be words like, "I can do this," or "You're amazing, dear one." Or it may be something like, "You've got this," a little bit more fierceness. And if you're really not sure what that might sound like, it may be more like, "What would I say to my friend in this situation?" Just like how we started. These wonderful practices of treating ourselves with kindness. "This hurts. I'm not alone. Can I offer myself some kindness?" Now, these simple phrases can be used in a longer sitting down, slowing down moment, or you can use them in a moment when it's really hard, before you go into a meeting with a parent or a large staff meeting and you're feeling the sense of overwhelm or stress. "Whew, okay, I notice this is hard. I'm not alone. Other people would feel like this. What do I need right now? What kind of kind or compassionate words can I offer myself?" And this practice we use over and over and over again when it's challenging. So simple, yet such an important practice. One that we can use over and over again to really bring into practices of sustainable well-being and long-term self-compassion. Now, if you want to learn more about mindfulness and self-compassion, which I really hope you do, that this just sort of touched the top of, let's dive into this. Let's join Lisa and a really great webinar. We're going to do this October 29th. It's a full day. I hope you'll join me. It's the last Friday of October. It's going to be a fabulous day where we can really dive into so many practices of why, how, and what we need to do to support our well-being. We're going to take the day and we're going to really understand the connection between stress and burnout and some of that impact on how it affects our teaching and learning. We're going to really understand, what overwhelm feels like, what are the causes of burnout, and where does it sit in our body, and this concept of compassion fatigue and how it connects in our body and our brain. We're going to dive deeper into mindfulness. We're going to learn some practices that we can do in and out of the classroom, informal and formal practices that help us to regulate during really stressful moments. And then we're going to really learn more about these practices of self-compassion, especially about how to meet that inner critic, that really pesky voice in our head that says, you're just not good enough, or you're never going to get there, because many of us have this inner critic, and in our classroom it shows up sometimes. And then we're going to lean into some sustainable practices of savoring and gratitude, and really end the day with some structures around how do we create some sustainable well-being. I think it's going to be a really fabulous day. I'm really excited. Much of it will be live. Well, all of it will be live. You'll have me. We'll engage in practices. We'll engage in a community and connection. And much of the day will follow along with the book that I've just written. So if you haven't got your hands on the book, Self-Compassion for Educators, I really hope that it lands in your hands soon and that you'll join me at the end of October so we can take these practices of mindfulness, common humanity, loving kindness, wrap them all up into knowing more about self-compassion that can help you long-term in and out of your classroom. Because these days are hard, and I get it, my friends. It is difficult to be an educator in our world right now, but you're not alone. And I want to show you a path that will support you so that we can continue to show up and be with these kiddos, because this is why we do this work. We want to be able to be present and engaged with them. And we don't want to do it from a place of feeling burnt out and exhausted. So please join me. It's been lovely. I will stick around for a few minutes if there's any questions. I'm not sure if there are. I wanted to share a few fun practices. I hope they're fun for you. They're sure fun for me. I really hope that you'll join me at the end of October. I'm so glad that some of you are already saying you're going to come find the way. Get in, find it on PESI, and join me at the end of October. And yeah, if you're watching this later, because so many of you were teaching, I hope that there's practices that landed for you and that you'll find me and connect. I'd love to hear, what's your favorite practice? What did you learn from today? And what really resonated for you? Thank you to those of you who are here live today. I really appreciate it. I'm so glad that some of what we were talking about resonated, that you loved that slow practice. Me too. Me too. I do that all the time. Between students that I see at school, before I even walk into my school, before I even walk, like while I'm still sitting in my vehicle, I use that slow practice. I see Tiffany's popped up a question. Can you speak to whether or not CEUs will be offered for social workers? This is training I need. Oh, I love it. The slow, and thank you that the slow resonated for you. I'm so glad it did. Yes, I think there is CEUs available. I know that they're set up for educators. I have to be honest, I don't know about social workers, but you know what? If you message me, I will find out for you, and we can discover whether or not the CEUs are there for the continuing ed credits are there for social workers as well. We will try and make that available. I definitely know that you can get some continuing ed credits if you are an educator for this session. So Tiffany, I hope that you'll join us on October 29th and that we can get you the credits that you need. Thank you for asking that question. I sure appreciate it. If you have any other questions, I'm happy to stick around. I hope you have a beautiful day. Some of the words that I often offer myself at the end of any time that I engage with people is some of the words that really land for me every day, which are go slow, as you can imagine. Stay present. Be here now. Be kind and trust yourself. So join me October 29th. You can register at PESI, at PESI's website right there, www.pesi.com/Baylis Live. I hope you'll enjoy a full day with me then. We'll get to engage a little bit more in chat and check-ins and small groups and talks, and lots of practice, lots of take-home activities, and a full workbook of exercises that you can do from beyond just this session to make it long-term. Jeff just put in a comment here that I'm seeing. I'm so glad that you developed a staff support group with many of these skills. This is amazing. Lots of resistance and overdose and death. I'm really sorry, and I feel that with you. It must be really hard to sit with that in your school. It's really hard to take time off and rejuvenate, but it's so important. So the practice in self-compassion, often we say to ourselves, what do I really need right now? This is such a quintessential key question. And so when things are really hard, as Jeff was just saying, in our schools and our classrooms, and I've lived that with you, Jeff, I know how challenging this is. Often we'll just stop and say, what do I need? Maybe perhaps a day is actually rejuvenating. Perhaps maybe what I need is to connect with my friends and colleagues and talk about this. Perhaps what I need is to go for a big long walk. And only you know that answer. This is the essence of sustainable well-being. There's no quick and easy check. But what I do know is that when things are really hard and we slow down enough to say, what do I really need right now? Right? Not that quick answer, but like when I peel back some of those layers and say, what do I need? Hopefully, maybe Jeff, this full day on October 29th will be just what you and your team needs, and you can join me there. And we can dive into some of these long-term sustainable practices. Thanks for offering that that bit of vulnerability of how hard the work is right now for you. Well, my friends, thank you for those of you who are here, who added a comment and engaged with me. Go slow, stay present, be kind to yourself, be kind to others, and trust that you can do this hard work. And join me October 29th.